Hi, good evening, friends. Thank you so much for your patience and thank you for joining today evening. Uh, uh, Welcome to the ninth edition of JHS Excellencia Series. This is a special exclusive series for all the friends of JHS, our team members, our respected clients. And before we get into the session, I would like to acknowledge the presence of some senior dignitaries in the audience today. We have with us Mr. Nagesh Pingye, a celebrated chartered accountant, Mr. Anil Kamath. He's currently the chairman of Infigo Eye Hospitals, as well as a celebrated chartered accountant, Mr. Murtuza Kachwala, ex-WRC chairman, and several other dignitaries who are there with us. And our very important and special guest today is our expert faculty, Beroz Gazdar with us. We are really privileged to have her with us amongst us to be taking this session on winning in a transformative world. I'm sure that you will find this session very, very enchanting and very exciting. It is focused on sustainability, climate change, with a focus on implementation of ESG in line with the regulatory climate in the country. So let us begin by a brief introduction of our learned faculty, Beroz Gazdar today. Beroz has been an exceptional professional. By qualification, she's a company secretary and she also holds an international degree from the Swedish Institute in the area of CSR and sustainability. An impeccable track record of over 40 years. Beroz has seen both the world. She has been in the industry as well as on the professional services side, and she also has been a trainer. And to take you through her credentials quickly, uh, as I mentioned, she's got track record of over 40 years in the areas of legal, secretarial, resource mobilization, business excellence, HR, commercial logistics, and of course, sustainability. She has spent a long time in her career with Mahindra Group in the areas of infrastructure development, especially of SEZs. She has also played a critical role in implementing sustainability ESG policies at the M&M Group. The entire responsibility for integrating ESG in business was given to her as early as 2009. So she has been an early starter on the concept of sustainability and ESG, which we are witnessing in India a great amount of interest and focus. She has led the entire group sustainability initiative since 2015. She has retired, and since then she has been focusing on several initiatives in the area of sustainability. She has taken up special assignments at the Center for Responsible Business as a think tank working on the climate change and sustainability. She has also set up the Baker Tilly DHC's practice on sustainability. She has also played key consulting roles at Mahindra Logistics, Mahindra United World College for introducing sustainability, and has been a trainer at NISM on the subject of sustainability. So please give her a warm welcome and requesting Beroz to take the program ahead and start with a presentation. So over to you, Beroz.
Thank you very much, Josefa, for the introduction. Uh, I am I hope I'm able to add value to all the guests this afternoon, and I hope I'm able to do justice to and your time well spent. So, am I audible, friends?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. So today we all know we're living in a very highly transformative world, and to be able to sustain and be resilient to it, we need to really rethink and reevaluate everything. So what we do is, to start with, we'll set the context. context of what this whole thing is all about. And this is really, we have seen that since Industrial Revolution, society has been driven by an increasing pace of change. Changes in the way we live, changes in the way we think, changes in the way we've educated, and hence the way we did business and we do business. So every few decades, the game-changing innovations have emerged time and again, like the locomotive, electricity, automobiles, airplanes, you know, television, and of course, information technology. This did result in human progress in many ways, but we fail to see the big picture. And today, the greatest disruptive event that is glaring in our face is climate change. An event is the result. This is an event which environmental scientists have agreed is a result of ruthless exploitation of natural resources in the name of progress. And so this has resulted in displaced communities, conflict situations, etc., besides, of course, vitiating the environment. So these are some ruthless transformations that have happened and which continue to happen in our current, and if our current approach sort of, continues. So so we have got issues of glaciers kind of melting, heat raising sea levels, warmer oceans, higher temperatures, what should I say, deforestation, changes and patterns in everything which is affecting our lives. So today's session is designed to understand the evolving business environment and how the existing challenges can be addressed to work towards a sustainable future. So having said the context, we'll go to what the current business landscape is like. I mean, it's no rocket science, but just to get the house in order. So there are constant shifts in realities as we see. So we see water, food, energy security as an important issue which keeps coming up. Natural resource depletion is a problem, and we all know it. Demographic shifts and thereby conflict situations is something which is kind of there, which we work in. Climate change, changing of shareholder and stakeholder expectations, influence of technology, because we've now started living in a seamless world. Anything happening in any part of the world can affect you anytime. So this is rather, not very sort of stable. What are the emerging trends, therefore? On the other hand, we need to kind of be sustainable and resilient to all this change. So there are some changes which have already started occurring. For example, extended producer responsibility. Earlier, the producer was responsible only for whatever happened within his factory gates. But now the manufacturer is supposed to be responsible for his entire value chain and supply chain, etc. Life cycle assessment. Entire life cycle of the product till the end of life, the manufacturer is now also responsible for. Circular economy, as to how you could kind of keep reusing your waste and, sort of so that the natural resources are not all the time kind of plunged upon. International commitments have started, like Sustainable Development Goals, SBTI, which is the Science-Based Targets Initiative, etc. So just as there are changes in the environment, there are also changes in the expectations of the various stakeholders. And these are necessary because that will make businesses more resilient. So what are the challenges we are facing? Growth is not sustainable. We know today the average lifespan of companies have become shorter and smaller and smaller. So preparedness for disruptive changes. It's very easy to say, but very difficult to do. When suddenly something comes up, to suddenly sort of respond to it is not an easy task. Resilience is very important. ability to make voluntary disclosures, therefore, is another expectation of the stakeholders, and that also becomes a big challenge. So what is the way forward? We have to have integrated thinking and an integrated approach. We only looked earlier at financial profits. Now we cannot afford to do that. Risk and strategy matrix must include ESG parameters. So it has to be embedded in your risks right to begin with. Equal focus on financial and ESG performance and voluntary disclosures are also expectations which are becoming more and more mandatory, and which one has to be a little sensitive to it. So what are the changing expectations of stakeholders? Investors are, of course, our most important stakeholder because they, after all, hold the purse strings. So they expect voluntary disclosure of performance going beyond finance. So, whether you call it a TBL, that is a triple bottom line reporting, or you call ESG reporting, non-financial reporting, whatever you want to call it, but they do want to go beyond finance because all the problems are coming. I mean, everything is interconnected. So, we can't just segregate things and look at it in silos. Accountability, ethics, transparency, and of course, financial returns is what investors are looking for. Government and regulators, they have put in now stricter ESG regulation. As I mentioned earlier, extended producer responsibility across the value chain and across the life cycle of the product. The third stakeholder is customers. Of course, as we always say, customer is king. But depending on who your customer is, most of them now are quite conscious of the problems to the environment and therefore want environmentally friendly, socially responsible products, enhanced demands for quality, and of course, brand value. Suppliers and dealers, of course, they're like our business partners, as we all know. Continuous business pipeline is what you expect, is what they expect from us. If you are, depending on what part of the value chain you are, support for changing regulations and stakeholder expectations are there all the time. So these are sort of, and communities. But lastly, these are social. They actually, the communities provide companies for a social license to operate. Gone are the days when people were just being thrown out of their homes and you built a factory over there, right? So now you have to be sort of, they have the wherewithal and the will to kind of speak up and put large, and there are many stories in history, recent history where large corporations have been sort of had to kind of leave a place just because the local community did not approve of those, of whatever the project was. So, hence, what is corporate sustainability is in such a landscape that we just talked about? So this is this may look like something straight out of a textbook, but nevertheless it may. So we've kind of, in this chart you have some of the various aspects that we have in sustainable to be a sustainable company, which is social, economic, and environmental areas. So the approach has to be very inclusive. So this is an approach which creates long-term value by implementing a business strategy that takes into consideration the existing and emerging dimensions of business. Now, this is a challenge, existing and emerging dimensions in whatever you do, in environmental, social, and economic aspects, and that too across the life cycle of the product. So it is kind of, I personally looked at the various areas where expectations are increasing, and one has to look at the entire product cycle, etc. What really is corporate sustainability? So I just mentioned that this may look like a textbook definition, but it brings out all the aspects which are important if one has to understand how we are going to take this forward. So an approach, it's a sustainability or corporate sustainability is an approach that creates long-term stakeholder value. So this is very important, long-term stakeholder value. So you have, by implementing a business strategy that takes into consideration the existing and emerging dimensions of business under environmental, social, and economic aspects across the life cycle. Now, this is really a big mixed pot, it's like a big khichdi pot, and you need to kind of decipher and sort of segregate things and again integrate it in your business to see that you are able to be so that you're sustainable and resilient and profitable. Okay. So so that means there are big shifts that business leaders have to kind of look at, and some of the olden kind of earlier issues have to be set aside. For example, from quarter to quarter thinking, you have to go into a futuristic thinking, the big shift in the way you look at your business, you look at strategy, you look at everything, from capital cost to life cycle cost, from shareholder focus to stakeholder inclusion, from outsourcing for convenience to being responsible for the entire supply chain. Now, supply chain has now kind of become very, very important and very, very different, because earlier a supply chain was looked at more like, having somebody do your work and, sort of with, especially in services, and you just sign it off and you do things. But now that's not going to work. If there's something wrong even in your supply chain, including ethics, including the quality of the product, you're going to, as a user of the person's services, also you are responsible. So there are such very, very sort of drastic changes which are emerging. From confidentiality to transparency. So earlier, one used to be very confidential about everything, and whatever was mandated, you kind of put in public domain. Now that's not kind of really a thing to go. Of course, this does not apply to R&D or something like that, but otherwise you're supposed to be kind of and we'll deal with this a little later again. So, and then from mandated financial disclosures to voluntary disclosures. So this again, you have to come forward and say, I will disclose this, although I may not have done very well in this particular aspect. But that is what will show that, you are sort of really a true business person and wants to do that what is right. So the next, so I hope it was kind of, this gave you an idea of the evolving business landscape. The next point, therefore, is how do you align yourself with such a transformative environment? So these are some of the suggestions. Of course, it all depends on what kind of business you are, your size of business, etc., etc. But these are by and large some of the things which you have to kind of must have, so to speak, to be able to win in this kind of transformative environment. So first is broaden this risk spectrum. You have to proactively consider future risks regarding natural resources availability and changes in the expectations of stakeholders. So it is very tough, but you have to kind of, companies which have started doing these things or had started doing these things have definitely seen an advantage, and they increased their sort of, commitment more and more as they went up. And these companies are now doing very well for themselves. So we do see a clear business case for this, and develop proactive risk mitigation strategies. So again, these are difficult things, but it has to be intelligently kind of worked out, and that will be your long-term sort of, to your long-term advantage. Sustainable supply chain. As I mentioned earlier, you have to enhance your sphere of influence to not only get your suppliers who is dealing with you, but your sub-tier suppliers. And that is why there's this whole concept of cradle to grave that you now have to follow. And you would be able to do it only if your supply chain is kind of strong. And therefore, you also need to adopt them in a manner speaking, hold their hands to see how they get into the sustainable space. And we encourage local sourcing. So that's again another which many companies do, because it helps the company also, and it kind of has a, it's got a win-win situation with the society and the organization and business. Create awareness and make suppliers future ready. Awareness programs, training programs of suppliers to understand what is human rights, why do you need diversity and inclusion, why do you have, these kind of new concepts which keep coming, what should you do for governance. You have to handhold them and make them understand what the whole thing is. Create a sustainable growth trajectory. I mean, you look at new products, services, and of course, new customer groups or now people at various stratas of the economic pyramid. Define rural distribution models. So there are things which kind of, you need to be a little proactive. Of course, this is, this is just an indicative list of things, and there are lots. When you're in your business, you know your business the best. So you would be able, once you have this thinking integrated in your business, you will come up with ideas as to how to take this forward. Then the other thing is enhance product responsibility. This product safety in some industries like automobiles, etc., is very, very important. And you have to, so this is, you have to have a concept of, enhanced product responsibility from cradle to grave, so that, this really enhances your brand value and would help you. Develop processes to constantly do life cycle assessment, end of life assessment. These are concepts which are coming up very, very, and a lot of people have started looking at it. And, it's sort of, I'm sorry, it's not easy, but if you set your mind to it, then it's not that difficult either. So then constant innovation, create an innovation-led organization and convert risks into opportunities. There is this concept, and especially in engineering companies, is designed for engineering. You have to do it as you have to shift it from design to engineering and environment approach. So this will help you reduce your energy, usage and things like that. Transparency and accountability, of course, it's a no-brainer. Voluntary disclosures, as I already mentioned, these are things that align your policies, be more transparent and open about things. If there are some problems, and if you need to make a disclosure on that particular topic, say, sorry, this has happened, but we are looking into it, rather than saying everything is hunky-dory. So let's just take a look at the expectations from emerging disclosure framework. What are the changes in the disclosure framework frameworks already in action and have been adopted by quite a few companies, including a lot of Indian companies? So the first one is the triple bottom line approach, which covers economic, environmental, and social dimensions of business. This was first started by GRI, that is Global Reporting Initiative, Amsterdam-based, a Norway-based company, which kind of came up with this. And they had, the good thing about this disclosure framework is that it has, over the past 10 odd years, they have gone from version 0 to version 5, and now they have converted it into standards. It is a best, what should I say, learning kind of a, sort of Bible, I would say, to understand, because it really gives complete details of why you do, what you should not be doing, etc. And it has been accepted, or if you get yourself audited and rated, it is accepted by investors, etc. So this is one, I think, to me, I feel it is the best kind of sort of report, the triple bottom line reporting. Transparency, so all economic dimensions put together, the weightage on ethics, transparency, and governance. Now, this is one area where you have to respond, and where transparency is important. Again, inclusion of value chain from cradle to grave. Materiality. Now, all the disclosure frameworks want you to find out material issues which are linked to business performance and report on that. Comparable data. All these emerging reporting disclosures have comparable data. So, need you to give your data so that it can be compared with your own past data, and also can be compared with data in the industry, which sometimes you may be not doing too well, but at least you will start working in a way where the best in class industry is going. Integrated reporting. This is kind of something very new and relatively new, I should say, where the disclosures have to be made to key stakeholders across 6 capitals, not just financial capital, but also human capital, intellectual capital, social capital, natural capital, and manufactured capital. It's kind of, and see how every rupee spent or every dollar spent, how it kind of sort of makes a difference to all these capitals, or go beyond the financial capital to other capitals as well. So these are basically expectations of emerging disclosure framework. Now, I think in my excitement, I jumped the gun and talked a lot about Global Reporting Initiative. It's been my favorite Bible, where I've learned a lot from. So this is to just explain to what are the new voluntary disclosures. So as I said, GRI started the triple bottom line reporting. It's an independent international organization that pioneered sustainability reporting framework, as I mentioned, since 1997. So they have, as I already mentioned, 5 times, they have sort of improved it version after every 2-3 years, and today they have a standard. The Dow Jones Sustainability Index. The Dow Jones Sustainability Index is one of the world's, you have to report to them by invitation. So only if they invite you, can you report to them. So obviously you have to be a company who has had a big borrowing from, from the financial institutions. If you don't respond, they just give a list in the, what should I say, on their website, that these are the companies we asked for information, did not bother to respond. And the others, they kind of, what should I say, they evaluate, and they give, what should I say, levels of evaluation, and the questionnaires are different for different industries. So this is another very good learning ground for a company who wants to get into, wants to get into the sustainability space. If they are a listed company, it really helps, because, and if they ask you for a, disclosure, it would be nice in your interest to do it, however bad the first report might look, because you will get a response from there saying, where have you gone wrong? What can you do? So, you should have that, strength to it. So the third one is the Carbon Disclosure Project. It is again a non-financial analysis of performance on behalf of investors, where the asset under management is over $100 trillion. So you can imagine what kind of fancy financial institutions these must be. And earlier they started with Carbon Disclosure, CDP's Carbon Disclosure Project, and their logo got kind of registered and everybody knew them as CDP. So now they have extended as CDP Water, CDP Forests, CDP Supply Chain. So they actually have CDP focused on supply chain, water, forest. So depending upon what your business is, if your business is such where water is of great importance, then you can adopt this disclosure framework, and that would kind of, again, is very good. The integrated reporting framework also is there. It has just started. Companies have started using it, but it is sometimes a little, what should I say, a little difficult to kind of really put everything. It looks sometimes, some of them, personally speaking, that I've seen, looks more like a storytelling by the company to the investors. So it's not, it's not yet picked up the way it sort of earlier when it had started. Then Sustainable Stock Exchange. Now this initiative, this is again something which should be an eye-opener to all of us, that even the stock exchanges are now getting into this. It's a UN-led initiative for exploring how the ESG performance and sustainable investment can be promoted. So then there is PRI, Principles of Responsible Investment, which is an investor-based initiative with UNEP and UNGC. Again, it has 1,300 plus signatories, having asset under management of $59 trillion. So these are all big investor groups which are now very, very actively coming to this whole space and wants to kind of, get information for companies. And actually, there have been many cases where investors, after they get this report, have also withdrawn from their commitment when they found that there are governance issues, or there are some displacement of society issues, etc. And then there has been a lot of, there have been some international commitments on climate change. In 2015, the United Nations started something called the Sustainable Development Goals. So there are 17 goals covering a lot of things with regard, around sustainability, like hunger, poverty, water, gender diversity, and life above the land, life below the sea. So there, and collaboration and engagement. So this is what it, and it expects all governments to kind of now start working on it. The Paris Agreement, this was taken up at the Paris Agreement, and 195 countries, including India, have signed up for it. So all the various yojnas you see right now that the government comes up are all aligned to these 17, one or two of these 17 SDG goals. Then there are also concepts like net zero greenhouse gas emissions, or it's also called a net zero challenge, whereby you offset your carbon emissions that you are making in your production against doing something whereby carbon emissions can be reduced. So for example, you have a plant operating which is very high on emissions, on carbon emissions. You do some afforestation project whereby carbon dioxide can be reduced in the atmosphere. So these are kind of concepts which are coming up. So now there is also so there is a challenge, so of zero carbon challenge by 2050. So you want to zero emissions challenge by 2050, which is very much on the cards right now. So this is something which is what is happening at home in India. How it is happening to the ESG reporting. So this is just the way in which, and it will give you an idea how even India has tried to progress, taken it step by step. So in 2012 and 13, in 2011, business responsibility reporting was introduced by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and SEBI took it up in the very next year, 12-13, mandated the business responsibility reporting to 100 listed companies by market cap. At that time, nobody really took it very seriously. Some of the companies started reporting, but it was kind of said, like one more thing to kind of submit, kind of a thing. Then in 2015-16, the reporting boundary was extended from 100 to 500 based on market cap. That's when I think some people got up from their sleep and saying, it definitely showed that they are going to kind of increase their sphere of influence. Then in 2020, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs introduced the NGRCB, that is the National Guidelines for Responsible Business Conduct, where the scope of BRR was increased. The business responsibility reporting was increased by this new suggestion, and it included value chains and product. Everything that we talked about earlier was all integrated into the reporting. In 2021, SEBI upgraded the BRR to BRSR, that is Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting, and further extended the boundary of reporting to 1,000 listed companies with effect from 20 to 23. So as we speak right now, 1,000 listed companies are supposed to mandatorily give their non-financial disclosures, make their non-financial disclosures on ESG aspects. So, I mean, this is just, I mean, we'll see a little later how this will also progress into something bigger. So just to give you an idea, I'm sorry for those who may not have been introduced to business responsibility reporting. There are a set of disclosures, as I said, prompting Indian corporates to progress from financial reporting to triple bottom line reporting. Now, we already talked about the concept of cradle to gate, from cradle to grave to cradle to grave. So this paradigm also, life cycle assessments and all are kind of getting, got into the system of the reporting of BRR. It was, as I said, it was based on the National Voluntary Guidelines issued by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. And it has 9 principles with, core elements that you need to actually kind of on each principle. We'll talk about it a little later. Then you have the increasing disclosures expectation from BRR and BR from, expectations when we shifted from BRR to BRSR. So BRSR also has disclosures, the same 9 principles as the BRR. However, there are many changes. Here is where they've also integrated key stakeholders and material issues are something that the company must talk about. Just as the other investor, disclosure frameworks expect, now here also it is expected. Most information to be backed by year-on-year numbers so that they can compare trends and see how well you are doing or otherwise. The very good thing that they have done is they have 2 levels of disclosures. One is essential and the other is leadership. Essential is compulsory for everybody to answer. Leadership may do kind of a level which companies should do if they are following such kind of protocols. But the best thing it does is it allows the companies to understand where this will lead to later on. So if you start working on these leadership kind of disclosures or leadership level disclosures, then you will be ready when these disclosures become mandatory. So I think this is one thing that you need to kind of look at. So what does the leadership levels, they have gone deep, they have deeper expectations, like details of trainings to the board on BRSR and NGRBC, or extended producer responsibility, human rights, etc., non-discrimination. So all these issues that we talked about earlier in the disclosure frameworks, that emerging disclosure frameworks have now, in international disclosure frameworks have now come into BRSR as well. So this is again an indication that things are going to go in this direction. So these are the 9 principles. I mean, I've just listed them out. It talks about governance, product responsibility, employee development, protection of human rights, protection of the environment, policy advocacy, things like that. So that is what it is. So we can just go further. So what is the business case? Well, we talked of a few earlier, but what is really the business case of doing all this? Because earlier when I used to talk to managers, they would say, "Sab bakwas hai, why do you want to do all this? Nothing will happen." But now, of course, things have, the proof of the pudding is in front of you. So I think we have to take a decision. It's each one of us. So basically, the business case is that it helps us anticipate and prepare ourselves for future material scarcity. So a lot of, it depends in certain industries who are into, who use natural resources or who use, food, etc. If they, anticipate and see how they can kind of either innovate or do something whereby they are able to sort of mitigate that risk whenever it comes in the future. Agility in the process of improvement and be future ready. So this really helps you to be future ready, because you are not taken by a shock anytime these things happen. Access to capital and innovation. It definitely helps. Anything which is kind of in good governance, is a powerful differentiator for large funding agencies, and therefore innovation and access to capital does kind of help, because it instigates innovation and it helps in access of capital also. Okay, sorry. Eco-efficiencies. It has direct correlation with cost saving, which we've discussed. We've talked about it. That sometimes, if you, for example, if you reduce the energy consumption, automatically your cost of, cost is going to reduce. But it depends from, again, as I said, industry to industry and your place in the supply chain, etc. But then you can help. It helps in shifts of management focus from ROI alone to a life cycle cost. So it makes your thinking more broader. It makes your thinking more sort of resilient, so that you are able to deal with problems which suddenly come up without having to go through too much of a heartburn or lesser heartburn, if at all. So it's employee loyalty. Recently, the recent kind of generation, they are very conscious of this. So they sometimes, ask companies whether you're doing this, or why did you want to join our company? Their answer is that you are, do a lot of CSR, or you do, and you are very conscious of the environment. And therefore, so that's also an advantage. And reputation and trust, of course, we've seen a lot of companies after doing this have come in the, rating of, best companies in India or in this sector. I mean, there are many examples of this. Social license to operate. If it increases the business reputation of and therefore it gives you a license to operate in that location. And there have been many, again, as I mentioned earlier, instances where the local society were against the companies coming and vitiating their environment, but that kind of also gets addressed. So financial viability, of course, is an important thing which we have to kind of take up. Anyway, so now, having put all these kind of facts on the table, what is it that we can do to become sustainable? So one of the things that you can do is leverage the BRSR and other disclosure frameworks. This is really one of the best ways of taking things forward, is to see, what these disclosures are asking for, and you do see sense in that. So the first thing that can be done is integration of PR across the organization at the strategic level. Yeah, I see that. There is one question on the group. I will take it a little later if you don't mind. Okay, so coming back to this, so it requires an integration of BRR across the 3 levels of the organization, that is strategic, managerial, and organizational, in the way these 3 levels would understand and they have the wherewithal to do. So looking at the strategy level, it helps in the alignment of non-financial and financial aspects to vision, mission, and core values. This is very important. You have to integrate your intention of becoming sustainable and being more responsible towards people, planet, and governance, is by mentioning it in your vision, mission, and core core values, because that way you really be reiterating it all the time, and it will force you, once you've mentioned it over there, it will force you, or it will push you to do things in a responsible manner. Place a premium on ESG dimensions in strategy for new products and services. So, we have, whenever you have new products and services on the table, what are the ESG dimensions that you will be looking at, can be kind of integrated at that level also, that level itself. Include in ESG parameters in all investment decisions. This is again a very important thing for an investor to kind of look at, and also see that the board and the investment committee is kind of aligned to the whole thing, because as I said in one case in BRSR, they expect a training program for the board of directors on ESG. So we need to kind of look at it a little seriously and see, because that is what will really help. All communications from senior leadership should stress on the importance of business responsibility and sustainable development. So our business leaders do have time when they address the employees or any external meetings. You must talk about it, but not leave it at talking and then do, so that the people down the line are encouraged to do what is being intended. We can give targets to senior leadership for getting rated on international agencies. So this is again, so for example, if you are in the top 10 in the DJSI rating in your industry in India, that's something to be celebrated. And therefore, and so this is what one can do to ensure that things get pushed in a conscientious manner. Collaborate with government, industry associations, and part of national and international alliances. So this is a very important thing, and it is happening in a big way. The industry associations and international alliances help in, again, learning things about different geographies and different companies, and also doing a lot of things beyond the mandatory expectations. Integrate sustainability at the management level. So what do you do there? Integrate the business responsibility into governance framework, risk universe, internal audit controls, and sourcing. There would be other verticals also, or other sections also, which are important to your business, which can be included. So by the way, whatever I'm saying here are just general statements that they would be different for different industries and make different sense for different industries. So of course, that is, you are the boss, you will understand your industry the best. So you would take a call accordingly. So these are just examples. So review of existing policy implementation, monitoring BR performance, identification of key stakeholders and material issues. This is very important, because now this is one expectations, as I mentioned earlier, and that has to go on the agenda of the management. At the heads of departments, etc., should be very conscious of that. Undertake a gap analysis and create a roadmap on year-on-year improvement of benchmarking exercises on ESG parameters. So you must first know where you stand to be able to go forward. And creating a roadmap is very, very important, because things change all the time. So sometimes you have a roadmap for 3 years. By the time you're in the second year, that whole target taken is of no use, because the law has changed or something is not available, or you stop producing a particular thing because it was not sustainable, whatever. So therefore, you need to kind of, create a roadmap and sort of see that the roadmap is being monitored properly, evaluated regularly by senior people in the organization. And at the operations level, various operations heads, whether it is HR, management, production, sourcing, anything, they should be, given certain KPIs and roles and responsibilities, and a knowledge pool has to be created within the organization so that people take it very, very seriously and understand why they are doing it, rather than just because the boss has said so. So integrate BR parameters in the value chain. This is very, very difficult. It costs a lot of money, but if it is done, there are long-term benefits for this, because your people in the value chain become your business partners. So what is the initial action plan that you could have or may have? Is prioritizing of the key stakeholders and understanding their expectations. This has to be a sort of a formal thing if you are not already doing it, but it's always better if it is formally done, that you decide who are the stakeholders. So you may be having 25 stakeholders, but who are the key ones without whom you cannot survive? It would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And therefore you concentrate on those 5 and work along with it. Begin with key expectations of the investors and regulators. So key expectations of key stakeholders, yes, but investors and regulators and expectations, obviously, because they are the ones who would be wanting profits, and profits are important. Just because we are talking of ESG does not mean profits are not important. Identify material issues from the business perspective as well as the perspective of the key stakeholders. So you should know it should be a win-win for both. And create a materiality matrix to identify key material issues. So it's a clear process that you can follow. I would like to share with you this process. This is a matrix. On one axis, you have got the stakeholder concern, and on the other, the priorities of the business. And then you map them on this graph. Of course, everything, all your key material issues are important to you, but so it's not as if they're required, not required, never required kind of a category, but high, very high, and extremely high. So you are going to do everything, but what are you going to focus on? What are you going to prioritize? So here is a materiality matrix in front of you, which shows at the extremely high end, which means things which are good for the stakeholders as well as for the business, are, it's very sort of it's not a surprise at all. So customer satisfaction, GHG emissions, digitization and technology. So depending upon what you have, you put it. And then, so if you see this graph, you will find that there are also things like, in this particular graph, things like gender diversity. What else is there? I can't read it. Community engagement, fuel prices, etc., continuity of fuel prices, etc., are important for the stakeholder as well as for the business, but not at the top of the the pyramid. It is kind of, so this is how you will grade. This is how and when you review it year on year, you may want to shift them up and down. It is your call. So, but then you will be able to stay abreast with the changing environment around you all the time if you have these kind of, what should I say, tools to kind of monitor the roadmap, the materiality matrix, the disclosure frameworks. If you have all this, you will be kind of all the time on your sort of toes, and ensure changing it and not just keeping it as if it's going to happen whenever it happens. So going back to the initial action plan, what else do you do? Awareness capacity building programs for employees. This is again a must. You can't just be sort of, starting at the managerial level and the board level or whatever, and then everybody in the organization have to be aware as to what is it and why are they doing what you tell them to do, which is different than earlier. They need to know it, and it's a must, because then there will be a commitment to it. And this also, I mean, from my experience, I've noticed that this also creates a lot of excited employees who wants to come and help you. So, and take this agenda forward. And then of course, there'll be some who feels that it's all bakwas, meant to help with them. But at least you have then a pool of employees who can take your agenda forward. Create a core leadership team to integrate ESG parameters. This is again very, very important, because unless the CXOs are conversant and committed to this, the chances of it really giving you all the advantages are that much more lower. So you have to have board level, CXO level commitment, and the leadership's commitment for this integration, so that you have, they get things done further. Create a short, medium, and long-term roadmap. Now, this is again, once you have the materiality matrix, you can create a roadmap, and the roadmap would be for, generally what is suggested is either a 3 years and 5 year roadmap, and then you see how you're going. And again, focus on material issues. You don't have to kind of look at everything that you have in your agenda. Consider voluntary disclosures based on standards connected with your business as a tool for continuous learning. So this is, again, we talked about it earlier, but it's very, very important. It will give you very good ideas. It will help you understand what market leaders are doing. It will help you understand what competition is doing, and it does sort of help. So basically, what one needs to do is, there will be a progressive increase in commitment to sustainability over 3 to 5 years. It's not like at the click of a button, so everything's going to kind of come around. No, you will have to decide how you go further and have a proper kind of a way. Normally, how things work is, to begin with, it's a very reactive approach. You focus on profits, like because you start doing new initiatives, you are bound to spend money on that. So then you get a little worried and you talk. So there's a reactive phase. Then there is an opportunistic phase where the focus is on the P&L. You want to kind of do better. And then there is a strategic level where there is a deeper transition to the sustainable business. So it's a very, and so if you do it progressively like that, then it will not be like a force fit, because it takes time also for people to digest it, for people to include it in their workspace, etc. So with this, friends, I give you the I sort of stopped with a little thought I had in my mind. Thank you very much. So it's, if I may say so, it's not the strongest that survived, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. So all the best, everybody, and I hope you had a decent session. Thank you. The questions.
So we have a few questions, Beroz.
Yes.
So I think they're there in the chat box. Is it visible?
Yes. It is a question: what is meant by pre-industrial level when taking the global warming to 2%? Lowering the global warming 2% less than the certain level. Yes. So the pre-industrial level, basically the comparison of the current increase in temperatures and increase in carbon emissions is done to the pre-industrial period, because this all started in the industrial period, when new, what should I say, new things started getting invented. For example, the automobiles, or telephones, or television, or electricity, manufacturing, using of natural resources and all that started. This is when this whole climate change problem got kick-started, so to speak. So now, because of certain, academia is involved in this, and a lot of research happening, there is a proper analysis done that what was the situation at the pre-industrial level and what is the situation now, and at the current rate, how it will go. So the idea is that you have to reverse this, this atrocious cycle of the climate change becoming, and the temperatures rising higher and higher. So if we had earlier, they had said that by 2050 we can, it should be at least 2% less, but then now they say it should be 1.5% and not 2%. So these are the kind of analysis that are done by scientists to show how, so what they are saying is true, or is kind of valid and is supported backed by research and numbers. Have I made myself clear?
One of the questions is that you talked about a lot of ESG frameworks, global frameworks, and then you spoke about the framework that SEBI has also pronounced. So in your view, which would be the most best suited framework for a developing economy such as India to be adopted, while companies do comply with the BRSR framework? So one of the participants has asked that question.
Okay, so to answer that, actually BRSR, one thing, yes, I forgot to mention, is that BRSR is designed based on GRI, CDP, DJSI, etc. So there is a lot of similarity between these two, which in fact I must say is a very good thing, because then otherwise companies go crazy kind of trying to report in different things in different for different investor groups and regulators, etc. So SEBI has been completely aligned to GRI. SEBI is completely aligned to DJSI. And so whatever they talk of, if you compare the two, so SEBI also talks, BRSR also talks about materiality matrix, material issues, key stakeholders, and all those nomenclatures. It all has borrowed it from the CDP and from GRI. So there is So as I'm sorry to repeat, it's good because then they're all aligned to one another. So you were to answer your question, which one you can start off with? I don't know. If you are a rather large company, it is good if you start with the GRI, because the GRI, the scope or the is much wider. Or if you feel, no, let me start with BRSR and then, like I take it up, that also it's a call you can take, because both are, more or less, both are aligned to one another. Let me tell you. So there is nothing which uh, GRI says X and BSR says Y. I have not come across any such thing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. The second one is, which board committee is best suited for overseeing ESG implementation and compliance?
Which board committee? I think you create a committee which is a mixture of, we all have external directors also, sort of non-executive directors, and many times you take these directors who have got knowledge of the business, So you must have, I mean, the best thing to do is have a mix of directors, 2 or 3 directors, and 2 or 3 CXOs or the head of the vertical, the MD or something like that. Then it becomes a more comprehensive team, because the people at the CXO level know what things are on the ground. The directors and all, of course, know what the industry, about the industry, etc., but doesn't have that inside understanding of these things. So it makes sense if a committee with both is kind of made.
Thank you. 3 more questions. One from our Delhi office, Binod Jaiswal. He says that how is ESG risk measured, and is there a scoring mechanism, and how do we measure it?
No, there is no scoring, mechanism as such for measuring ESG risks, but the materiality matrix is the one which helps us measure it in terms of compare it from the other with the other risks. Not really measure. There is no, but in your targets, you will take certain targets which are measurable. For example, if you say that I'm going to reduce my emissions by X% in so many in 2 years, then it is measurable. There is a system to kind of monitor it and report in your report whether it's doing well, not well, or something. But there is no scoring mechanism as such. So you have, for example, in environment thing, you have this science-based target initiative where there are these various, what should I say, various mechanisms to kind of count. I mean, how do you kind of measure carbon footprint, etc., like that, because carbon has to be whatever your emission gas has to be converted into carbon, and then it has to be measured. So there are those kind of things. The science-based targets initiative of this Paris Agreement is kind of works. So this is something companies might need to take professional help in that, or sometimes when there is very technical issues, and then initially you may need some technical help from an external consultant.
Thanks. 2 more questions. One from Deepa Srivastava. She's from Muthoot Housing Finance. She asks that which all industries or services this applies to statutorily.
No, it applies to everybody. It doesn't. There is nothing that only for, say, cement industry or high polluting industry. Nothing of that sort. First of all, where SEBI is concerned, though, it depends upon your market cap, irrespective of what you can. You can be a technical, IT company. You can be a, healthcare company, whatever you may be. If the norms and the disclosures are the same for everyone, so there is no such, In fact, the way they've done BRSR is that even the supply chain people in the 4th or 5th tier of your supply chain of a large company should also be able to respond.
My
So,
colleague, partner Nikhil Kocher from the Delhi office has got a couple of questions. Nikhil, you want to ask those questions?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Muzaffar. See, one question is basically based on the fact that what do you think would be the most difficult aspects when we start implementing an ESG program in an organization? You just spoke about, carbon emissions, and, it really leaves us wondering. You speak about technical help. So, what kind of engineer should we be contacting who can measure carbon emissions? So, what do you think would be the top three pain areas? Thank you.
difficult question actually. Top three pain areas are actually, if you ask me, and I can only speak of my experience, is converting people to think. I mean, I've had some experiences, maybe now it's not so bad, but I've had experiences where people have said, I said, what will happen to the next generation if we are not conscientious? So they say, so the guy told me, he's a head of a sort of organization, said, हमारे बच्चे बहुत होशियार हैं, कुछ ना कुछ जुगाड़ खेल लेंगे. I mean, these are kind of things I have heard, or they said that, no, this is all Western, sort of people in the West, they just होशियारी मारते हैं, कुछ जरूरी नहीं है करने के, so people's thinking have to be changed genuinely and really is what I feel is very, very important, because if your colleagues and if your CXOs and your board members are going to say this is all nonsense or it's too expensive, so you have typically the accountants, I'm sorry, there are a lot of accountants over here, till recently they felt it was a waste of money and a waste of time.
So the mindset and the cultural transformation.
Yes, I think that is the most important thing. So, I mean, I come from Mahindra, and I used to, every time Anand used to go for, giving lectures to some people in some factory or inaugurating a new place or something like that, I would kind of write down 5 lines and send it to his office, and he will make sure that he mentions that. So this is basically, and if it comes from, it's like coming from God himself, they will believe you. So, so you have to find out ways and means of doing that, but this is very important. The second most painful thing, if I may say so, is handling your supply chain. It depends on how complicated your supply chain is and what type of, what is the characteristic of your supply chain. Because some suppliers, sometimes tier 1 suppliers are businesses themselves. So one of the things, sorry to slightly digress, one of the things that the BRSR and even when Ministry of Corporate Affairs started this whole thing, they've always said that even the SMEs and MSMEs, so which means mostly they're all in the supply chain. So they want this kind of a, responsible kind of approach to be integrated in the entire value chain, upstream as well as downstream of the organization. Because then only, otherwise people will just tell their supplier to do something. If he wants to bribe somebody, for example, he'll say, "Main nahi karta hu, aap kar lo, and I'll pay you double or something, whatever." Then it's fine. Nobody knows about it, but then you're not kind of doing that what is right. So these are the things that you have. So to me, supply chain is a very important kind of factor to kind of take forward. Yeah. So I think I can't think of it. So
How do you measure carbon emissions?
I don't think this is a very there are some sort of technical experts now who can help you do that. I don't think this is a big problem at all. In fact, it's one of the smallest problems because everybody knows how to calculate. A lot of people, I don't, but a lot of people know how to measure carbon footprint and how to kind of, so that is not a, there are also individuals, and now in the IT has come into the sustainability space in a big way because they know that they're going to kind of be required. So I don't think calculation of GHG emissions is going to be a problem.
No, thank you so much for that. One last question from my side is, I believe the International Sustainability Standards Board, ISSB, has just
Yes.
released its standards on the 26th of June and wants them implemented with effect from January 24, 2024. How does that, what would that mean for Indian corporates in your view? Thanks.
Well, again, see, this is one of the examples that maybe I can use, also, is that suddenly this thing has come up. Now you suddenly don't know what to do. So I think one lesson from here is that you try to be, what should I say, future ready, so to speak. And if you would have known about this, or you were already looking at, sort of already responding to some of the disclosures, then you would have found this very, very easy. Of course, that's not answering your question, but just reiterating what I think that we have now is the time when you have to be future ready. So frankly, I have not gone through these standards, but I think from my experience that if a company has already been disclosing either BRSR or GRI or whatever, then to also follow these standards should not be difficult. But otherwise, how long it would take, it will depend from company to company. If you're totally in your own world and never bothered to see anything, then it's going to be a challenge. So are these the implementing by Jan 24 is for all what kind of companies? Everybody?
I don't think they would be applicable to Indian companies unless these points get integrated into the BRSR, because, unless there is a statutory
Okay.
promulgation in India. But, I do expect that, there was first a multiplicity of standards and then they started coming together and we kept hearing about the fact that they're going to get released. They finally have been released. So the question was now what? Thanks.
Okay. Someone's asked TBL and the 3PL are the same. Yes, it's the triple bottom line, people, planet, and profit. That's why it used to be called 15. This was like how ESG is more known today as a nomenclature. TBL was what triple bottom line was what was there uh, in, about say 10 years back. So, but it's the same thing. So it used to be people, planet, profit. Basically, it was the first time that they came and talked to people. So they wanted to say that non-financial issues are at par with financial issues. And therefore, triple bottom line, not just financial bottom line. Is that fine?
Yes. So we move towards the closure of the session. You've already receiving compliments, Beroz, for this excellent session. I will invite my colleague Ashish Karkhanis, who's a director at JHS, to give you the formal vote of thanks.
Good evening, everybody. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So, friends and respected seniors, thank you for your attendance to begin with. Beroz ma'am has given us a very enlightening session on the entire ESG landscape and the reporting mechanisms. She started off with the landscape of the business that exists now and what we are probably looking at down the future. She talked about how corporate sustainability is going to play a major role going forward, and how the terms of sustainability, resilience, and profitability have to be taken in the same context. uh, she gave us a complete breakdown on the big shifts which we would be looking at in terms of the thinking approach, right from futuristic thinking, looking at life cycle cost instead of quarter approach, looking at the responsibility for the entire supply chain, and one of the most important things, which is the voluntary disclosures, which is becoming increasingly important in today's context. Even SEBI from FY 22-23 has mandated BRSR reporting for the top 1,000 listed companies as per market cap. She gave us a complete breakdown on how to redefine the entire business approach and to align it with the integrating sustainability at strategy, management, and operating levels. Mm, the most important aspect of this entire session was also to see how this BRSR reporting and these voluntary disclosures are impacting the financial performance in terms of risk management, access to capital, eco-effectiveness, reputation and trust, as well as social license to operate. uh, she has given us an excellent insight into how we need to plan out the entire integration phase, which would take 3 to 5 year phase just to achieve the basic initiatives, and how it would help in the long run. So the entire gamut of explanations and the detailing out has been very helpful to us. And to top it off, the extremely informative and candid question answer session which we had, that was probably the icing on the cake. I think we would probably all love to have another session or more extended session with ma'am to get further knowledge and insights into this subject, since it is a very vast subject and probably we would require more of her knowledge and experience. But today, as we have a different defined time period, I would request all of you to carry out this vote of thanks with a huge round of applause. Thank you.